I used to believe Christmas was made of magic. The kind of magic you could touch, warm lights against the window, the smell of cookies melting in the oven, the sound of a child's laughter spilling down the hallway. Every year I'd decorate early, hang the garlands a little too perfectly, hum along to carols while pretending the world outside didn't exist. Because inside my house, I wanted it to feel safe. I wanted it to feel like love still lived there. That year was colder than most. The snow came early, heavy and bright, coating the street in white silence. From the window, everything looked perfect. Too perfect, like one of those Christmas cards that never tell you what happens after the picture's taken. I didn't know then that this would be the last time I believed in that picture. I woke before the sun, the soft glow of the tree lights flickering through the shadows. The house smelled like vanilla and cinnamon, the scent of peace, or at least the illusion of it. Daniel was still asleep. My son Ryan lay curled up in his blanket, his small body rising and falling with each slow breath. He was 7 years old. 7, still young enough to believe in Santa, still old enough to know when people laughed for the wrong reasons. I stood by his bed for a while, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. He looked so peaceful. I whispered to myself, "This is what matters." The morning would begin soon, laughter, gifts, family. And for the first time in years, my sister Megan and her kids would be joining us. Megan. Even the name brought a strange ache to my chest. She was my only sibling, 3 years younger, and for as long as I could remember, she had been the center of every story, the golden one, the daring one, the one people couldn't look away from. I was the one who stayed quiet in the background, smiling, cleaning up the messes she left behind. I used to tell myself that's what love was, helping her, forgiving her, over and over. When she called earlier that month, her voice trembling over the phone, I already knew what she wanted. "Clara," she said, "I hate asking this, but things have been rough. I don't want the kids to wake up to nothing this Christmas." I didn't even hesitate. I said, "Of course, Meg. I'll take care of it." Daniel wasn't happy when I told him. "You've done enough," he said. "She always finds a way to make you feel guilty." "She's my sister," I told him. "She has no one else." He looked at me quietly for a long time before saying, "And what about you? Who takes care of you?" I didn't answer. I just smiled the way I always did when I didn't have a good answer. I took extra freelance work that month. Late nights, long hours. The paycheck wasn't much, but I made it stretch. I wanted her kids to feel special, to have the Christmas they deserved. Or maybe I just wanted her to see I wasn't the failure she always thought I was. When the time came, I spent almost $1,800 on presents, a number that still makes me cringe when I think about it. I told myself it didn't matter. "It's Christmas, Clara," I said. "You can't put a price on family." The cashier smiled when I swiped my card and said, "That's a lot of love." I smiled back, but my chest ached. The morning of Christmas Eve, I wrapped each gift with care, ribbons, tags, tiny notes that said, "With love from Aunt Clara." I lined them under the tree like treasures waiting to be discovered. Ryan helped, his little hands trembling with excitement. "Mom," he said, "you're like Santa for everyone." I laughed softly. "Maybe," I told him. "But Santa always saves the best gift for last." He didn't know I had hidden his present in the closet, a remote control car he'd wanted for months. It wasn't as fancy as what I'd bought for Megan's kids, but it was all I could afford. I told myself he wouldn't mind. He always found joy in the smallest things. Morning came. Snow fell thick outside, muffling the world in quiet peace. The fire crackled softly in the living room. Everything was ready. The breakfast, the gifts, the music. When Megan's car pulled up, I felt that familiar mixture of excitement and anxiety. She stepped out, laughing into her phone, wearing a coat that shimmered even in the gray light. It wasn't the coat of someone struggling. It was the coat of someone who liked being seen. Her 2 kids, Liam and Ava, came running to the door shouting, "Merry Christmas." I hugged them, kissed their foreheads, and told them how much they'd grown. Then Megan walked in, her perfume filling the air, expensive, sharp, and too sweet. "Wow," she said, looking around, "you really went all out." "Look at these decorations," I smiled. "Ryan helped me." She nodded, eyes scanning the tree. "You really do have a lot of time for projects, don't you?" That tone, that slight bend in her voice that turned every compliment into an insult, it was back. I swallowed hard and pretended not to notice. We had breakfast together, pancakes stacked high with syrup, cocoa steaming in mugs. Daniel tried to keep the conversation light, but Megan had a way of twisting even the smallest comment into something competitive. Still, I told myself it didn't matter. "It's Christmas," I repeated in my head. "Let her have this." After breakfast, the kids gathered near the tree. "Can we open them now?" Ryan asked, his eyes bright. "Go ahead," I said, smiling. He handed Liam and Ava their gifts first. He loved watching people open presents more than opening his own. "I wrapped them myself," he said proudly. Liam tore into the paper, his face lighting up when he saw the gaming console. "No way, Aunt Clara, this is awesome." Ava squealed when she unwrapped her art kit. "This is the one from TikTok." Megan laughed, clapping her hands. "You really spoiled them, Clara. You shouldn't have." Her voice said, "shouldn't," but her eyes said finally, "You did something right." Then it was Ryan's turn. He opened the box I handed him, peeled away the paper slowly. He always opened gifts carefully, as if afraid to hurt the wrapping. When he saw the car, his whole face lit up. "Thank you, Mom," he said, hugging me tight. That moment should have been enough. It was perfect for one heartbeat. Then Megan spoke. "Aw, that's cute," she said, smiling just enough to show her teeth. "A little car. You can race it against Liam's PlayStation, huh?" Her kids laughed. Ryan's smile faltered. He looked at me, then at the car, then back down. "It's okay, Mom," he whispered. "I like mine." The room went quiet in my head, even though everyone else was laughing. I smiled, because that's what I was supposed to do. I laughed, because that's what kept the peace. But something inside me cracked, a small, invisible fracture that I didn't even try to hide. Later, when everyone was gone, I stood in the living room surrounded by torn wrapping paper and cold cocoa. Ryan's little car sat untouched under the tree. The console and art set were gone, taken home to Megan's perfect life. Daniel came in quietly, wrapping his arm around me. "Let it go," he said softly. "It's not worth it." But he didn't see what I saw, the look on my son's face, the way his shoulders had dropped when they laughed. It wasn't just about a toy. It was about something deeper, the first time my child felt he wasn't enough. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window watching snow fall under the streetlight, and something heavy settled in my chest. I had spent years forgiving, explaining, making excuses. I told myself that's what good people do. But that night, I understood something new. Being good doesn't mean being blind. And forgiveness, without change, is just permission to be hurt again. I looked at the sleeping house, at Ryan's door closed down the hall, and I made a promise to myself, quiet, sharp, absolute. This Christmas, she took something from me. Next Christmas, I'll take back everything she ever stole. Megan and I were born only 3 years apart, but sometimes it felt like we come from 2 different worlds. She was sunlight, loud, bright, impossible to ignore. I was the quiet rhythm underneath, the one who made sure everything held together while she burned through life like a spark that never learned where to land. When our father left, I was 12 and she was 9. I remember her crying at night, whispering that he'd come back. He never did. So I became the grown-up far too early, cooking, cleaning, listening to our mother cry behind closed doors, pretending not to hear, and Megan learned how to survive by taking. She took comfort, attention, praise, anything that filled the empty space he left behind. And I gave it, gladly, because that's what love looked like to me back then. By the time we were teenagers, Everyone already had a label for us. Megan was the pretty one, the fun one. I was the responsible sister. She could skip homework and still charm her way into a passing grade. If I missed a single assignment, teachers looked disappointed, as if I'd failed some sacred duty. She'd laugh about it, toss her hair, and say, "You're just jealous because you like following rules." And I'd laugh too, even when it stung. She dated boys who wrote her letters in glitter pen. I spent weekends helping mom balance bills. When she stayed out too late, I was the one who lied to cover for her. When she broke hearts, I was the one who listened to the stories afterward. Still, there were moments when I saw the child she used to be, the girl who'd sneak into my room during thunderstorms, clutching her blanket, whispering, "Don't let me be alone." And every time, I'd make space for her, because I couldn't bear the thought of her being afraid. Then life started moving faster. She married first, to a man named Tom, charming and ambitious. I stood beside her at the wedding, holding her bouquet, pretending not to notice that she'd chosen my favorite necklace to wear. Mom had left it to me, but when Megan said it would look better with my dress, I let her take it. That was how our story worked. A few years later, she had Liam, then Avia. She posted pictures of them in matching outfits, wrote captions about building the perfect life. I was happy for her. Truly, even when she forgot my birthdays, even when her phone calls came only when she needed something. When Daniel and I married, it was quiet, small, simple. Megan arrived late, looking like she'd just stepped out of a magazine, hugging me with one arm while checking her reflection in her phone screen. She told everyone she helped me choose my dress. She hadn't, but I smiled and let her have the story. Years passed. We both became mothers, but motherhood didn't bring us closer, it gave her new ammunition. Her kids spoke early, walked early, painted better, scored higher. If I mentioned Ryan's little achievements, she'd say, "Oh, that's cute. Liam did that last year." Every conversation turned into a scoreboard. And still I called her. I invited her. I tried. When Mom died, I thought grief might finally make us hold each other instead of fighting invisible wars. But at the funeral, she argued about the seating, complained about the flowers, and took selfies near the grave. While I stood silent, clutching the folded photograph Mom had loved. That night, I realized we didn't just grow apart, we grew in opposite directions. She climbed upward, reaching for the spotlight, while I stayed below, holding the ladder steady. Even after all that, I never stopped caring. When she cried about Tom leaving, I stayed on the phone for hours. When she said she couldn't pay the rent, I sent money. When she said she couldn't buy Christmas gifts, I bought them. And each time, she said thank you with a smile that never touched her eyes. I used to think forgiveness was the language of love. Now I know it can also be the currency of control. After that Christmas morning, after the laughter, after Ryan's small broken smile, I replayed our entire childhood in my mind. Every moment where I chose peace instead of truth. Every time I stood still so she could shine. I realized that all I had ever taught her was that my love came without consequence. So when she mocked my child in my own home, she didn't think she'd done anything wrong. Because I had trained her to believe I would never fight back. That thought sat inside me like a stone. The next few days passed in silence. I answered no calls, avoided social media, avoided looking at the photographs she had already posted, the ones captioned, "Another perfect Christmas with family." She had cropped Ryan out of one of them, of course she had. One evening, I found Ryan sitting in his room, building a tower of toy blocks. He looked up and asked, "Mom, are we still going to Aunt Megan's house next week?" I hesitated. "Do you want to?" He shrugged. "I don't know. I just don't want her to be mad. A 7-year-old shouldn't have to think like that. A 7-year-old shouldn't learn to apologize for existing." That was the night the anger stopped burning hot and started burning cold. It settled into something calm and clear, a kind of stillness I never felt before. The kind that doesn't scream for revenge but waits for justice. I began to notice things I hadn't seen before. The small inconsistencies in her stories, the little lies she told to make herself look better. The spa trip the week she said she couldn't afford groceries. The new phone she bought with the last of her savings. The way she bragged online about doing it all alone while quietly asking me for help behind the scenes. It was all there. The truth had been sitting in plain sight. I just hadn't been ready to look. Now I was. And somewhere between the guilt and the grief, I decided that if she needed to live in a fantasy, I would give her something real to face. Not to destroy her, but to stop letting her destroy everything good around her. That was the moment I stopped being the quiet sister and started becoming the woman I should have been years ago. He didn't argue. He kissed my forehead and left the room, and in that silence I realized he was afraid, not of Megan, but of what I might become. But I wasn't angry anymore. Not in a screaming, tearful way. My anger had settled into something disciplined, almost gentle. I created folders, finances, messages, photos. Each one told a story. The lies she'd told, the truth she'd hidden. I didn't exaggerate a single detail. I didn't need to. The truth was enough. Then came the decision of how to release it. I didn't want gossip. I wanted accountability, a mirror she couldn't escape. So I wrote letters. Not cruel letters, not vengeance wrapped in poison. Just calm, factual accounts addressed to a few people who mattered, our Aunt June, a couple of close family friends, and one mutual acquaintance who always admired Megan's strength. I attached proof. I didn't ask them to take sides. I simply wrote, "This is the truth. I'm tired of carrying it alone." When I pressed send, there was no rush of triumph, no applause in my chest. Only a slow exhale, like finally setting down a weight you didn't realize had been crushing you. The next morning, the air in the house felt different, lighter, but also charged, like before a storm. I made coffee and waited. The clock ticked louder than usual. Ryan asked, "Mom, why are you looking at your phone so much?" I smiled and said, "Just waiting for a message." By afternoon, it came. Aunt June's reply was brief. "I'm reading. Thank you for being honest. No judgment, no shock, just quiet validation." And that small line was enough to tell me the truth had started moving. Over the next few days, subtle shifts appeared in the world around me. Relatives stopped tagging Megan in their posts. One of her friends unfollowed her online. Another sent me a private message that simply said, "I always wondered." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The truth was speaking louder than I ever could. Megan must have felt it too. Her posts turned defensive long paragraphs about toxic people and family who can't handle others' success. She quoted Bible verses about forgiveness, then followed them with subtweets about betrayal. It was her favorite dance, play the victim, steal the spotlight. I watched quietly, not with glee but with an unsettling calm. She was unraveling in public the same way I had unraveled in private. And for the first time, I wasn't the one bleeding. Still, there were moments when guilt crept in, late at night, when Ryan's soft breathing filled the silence. I wonder if I'd gone too far. Then I'd remember his small voice that morning, whispering, "It's okay, Mom. I like mine." And the guilt would fade. One evening, I received an anonymous message from an unknown number. It said, "There's more to her story. You should know what she told people about you." I stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to delete it. Part of me wanted to open Pandora's box completely. Eventually, I typed back, "Who is this?" No reply. That night, sleep wouldn't come. The truth, once freed, doesn't stay still. It grows legs. It finds new rooms to enter, new mouths to speak through. I lay awake thinking about all the years I'd tried to protect her, all the lies I'd helped her tell just to keep the peace. Now those same lies were walking the world without her permission, and there was nothing either of us could do to stop them. Revenge, I was learning, isn't an explosion. It's an echo, and you never know how long it will keep bouncing back. By the end of that week, I realized something frightening. I didn't hate her anymore. I pitied her. Because now she was living in the one thing she could never control, the truth. The days after the letters felt unreal. Every ordinary sound, the kettle whistling, the hum of the refrigerator seemed louder, sharper. I started something that couldn't be undone, and now the world was adjusting to it. The first call came from Aunt June. Her tone was calm but cautious, like someone trying to hold a fragile cup without spilling it. "Clara," she said, "I've spoken to Megan. She's hurt," I said softly. "She's hurt because she was caught." June sighed. "Maybe, but truth doesn't always heal, dear. Sometimes it just rearranges the pain." When the call ended, I sat in silence, staring at the blinking cursor on my laptop. Rearranging pain, that's exactly what I had done. I hadn't destroyed it. I just changed its shape. Then the messages started coming in from people who'd known us for years. Some wrote in support. "You did the right thing." I always wondered about her stories. Others were quieter, distant. "I'm sorry things got so messy. I hope you both find peace." I could feel the shift, like invisible dust settling between everyone who'd ever believed in her version of events. Megan didn't call for several days. But her presence was everywhere, posts filled with vague sorrow, captions about betrayal from within, photographs of her children with long speeches about resilience. She was performing her pain, the way she always performed everything. Yet even through the filter and the practice poses, I could see it, the panic behind her eyes. When she finally did call, it was past midnight. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity or guilt made me swipe the screen. Her voice trembled, brittle and furious all at once. "What did you do, Clara?" "I told the truth," I said. "You've ruined me," she cried. "My friends won't talk to me. Tom's threatening to change custody terms. Do you have any idea what you've done?" My voice stayed level. "You did this, Megan. You built your life on lies. I just stopped holding them up for you." There was a long pause, and then she whispered, "I never thought you'd hate me enough to expose me." I closed my eyes. "I don't hate you." "That's the problem," she hung up. After that, the silence between us grew thick, stretching across weeks, then months. Family gatherings shrank. People stopped asking when we'd both be in the same room again. It was as if a fault line had split the family tree, and no one knew which side to stand on. For a while, I told myself I was fine with it. I worked, cooked, smiled when I needed to. But some nights, when the house went quiet, guilt would crawl back in. Not for telling the truth, but for how much it had cost. One afternoon, I found a white envelope on my doorstep. No stamp, no return address, just my name. Inside was a single sheet of paper, Megan's handwriting slanted and uneven. "You won, Clara. I hope it was worth it. You don't understand what you've started. Some truths don't heal, they spread." There was no signature. Just the echo of someone who no longer knew how to ask for help. I read it twice, then folded it carefully and set it in a drawer with the rest of the evidence. The drawer that had started everything, and for the first time I didn't feel vindicated. I felt tired. That night, Ryan came into my room holding his pillow. He was taller now, his face leaner, but his eyes were still the same, open, trusting. "Mom," he said, "why doesn't Aunt Megan come anymore?" I hesitated. "She's just sad." "Because of us?" "No," I whispered. "Because of herself." He nodded, thoughtful. "Maybe if you said sorry, she wouldn't be sad." That small sentence cracked something inside me that no confrontation ever could. I lay awake after he went back to bed, staring at the ceiling, hearing his words over and over. "Maybe if you said sorry." The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with a blank sheet of paper. It took me a long time to start writing. Finally, I wrote, "Megan, I didn't tell the truth to destroy you. I told it because I couldn't keep pretending anymore. I don't know if forgiveness is possible, but I hope you heal. Clara." I read it twice, folded it neatly, and drove to her house. Her car was parked outside, the same silver SUV from that Christmas. I walked up to the porch, slipped the letter through the door, and left without knocking. Driving home, I felt lighter, though not in the way I expected. Not peace exactly, something quieter, something close. The first week after Christmas felt unreal. Days blurred together. Dishes washed and rewashed. Phone calls unanswered. The tree still standing in the corner like a witness I couldn't face. I kept telling myself it would fade, that maybe I'd wake up and it would all feel smaller. But pain doesn't fade when it's tied to humiliation. It waits. It sharpens. Daniel tried to make me eat. He said, "You can't fix her." I nodded, but inside something whispered, "I don't want to fix her anymore." I stopped thinking about forgiveness and started thinking about truth, cold, undeniable truth. I pulled out an old shoebox where I kept receipts and messages over the years. At first, I told myself I was just cleaning. But as I sifted through them, I began to see a pattern, her handwriting on notes asking for help with rent, timestamps beside photos of her new handbags, the PayPal notification she'd accidentally sent to my email, showing Tom's monthly transfers. Each piece was small on its own. Together, they formed a map. Every lie, every manipulation, every time she'd built her image on my silence. I spread them across the dining table and stared at them until the lines blurred. It looked less like paperwork and more like a crime scene. My generosity had been the evidence. Her pride was the weapon. That night, I opened my laptop. The blue light painted the room in cold color. Ryan was asleep. Daniel was in bed. And I began typing, not a rant, not a confession, but a record. I wrote about the year she'd borrowed money, about the Christmas that broke me, about how kindness, without limits, turns into cruelty against yourself. Every word felt like stitching a wound closed with fire. When I finished, I saved the file under a simple name, December Truth. For days I did nothing with it. I went to work, smiled at neighbors, packed Ryan's lunch. But every night, when the house went still, I opened that file again, adding screenshots, receipts, messages. I was building something without fully knowing what it would become. Then, one afternoon, I got a message from Tom. We hadn't spoken in years. It was short. "I heard about Christmas. Are you okay?" I didn't know how much he knew, but his name alone told me the ripples had already begun. He said he was tired of Megan using their children as trophies in her endless contests. He said he still sent money, more than she admitted. He said, "You're the only one who ever saw through her." When I hung up, my hands were trembling. I wasn't imagining it. The truth had been waiting to be told. That night, Daniel found me sorting documents again. He stood in the doorway, quiet, patient. "Clara," he said, "what are you going to do with all this?" I looked up. My voice didn't shake. "I'm going to stop pretending," he sighed. "And if it hurts her?" "It already does," I said. "She just doesn't know it yet." Weeks passed. There was no reply, no message, no call. But the silence no longer hurt. It felt earned. Life became smaller, simpler. Ryan's laughter filled the rooms again. Daniel's smile returned, patient as always. I cooked dinners without checking my phone, watched the snow fall without thinking of who wasn't there to see it. On Christmas Eve, almost a year later, I found myself decorating the tree with Ryan. He placed a small silver heart ornament near the top. When I asked where he got it, he said, "It's for you. So you remember that hearts can shine again." I pulled him close, and for the first time since that awful morning, I let myself cry not out of sorrow, but release. Later that night, when everyone was asleep, I sat beside the tree. The house was dark except for the soft golden lights. Outside, snow was falling again, just like before. But it didn't feel heavy this time. It felt clean. I thought about Megan, where she might be, whether she read my letter. Maybe she hated me still. Maybe she found a way to start over. Maybe both. I realized then that forgiveness isn't about waiting for someone else to change. It's about choosing not to let their damage become your definition. Family shouldn't be a competition. It shouldn't be about who gives more, who wins, who looks happier on a screen. It should be about peace, the kind that doesn't need witnesses or applause. That night, I whispered into the quiet, "I forgive you, Megan." The words felt strange at first, but as soon as they left my mouth, something unclenched inside me. Maybe she'd never hear them. Maybe they were never meant for her at all. Maybe they were for me. When the clock struck midnight, I turned off the lights. The room fell into gentle darkness, the tree still glowing faintly in the corner. I sat there, breathing, letting the silence finally mean something other than pain. Because the truth, when it's finally spoken, doesn't just destroy, it cleans, it rebuilds. It leaves space for something new to grow. I realized I didn't need her apology. I didn't need the approval of the people who'd chosen to look away. All I needed was this: my son sleeping peacefully down the hall, my husband beside me, and a quiet house that no longer carried anyone else's chaos. I smiled through the tears and whispered, "Peace isn't something you find in others. It's something you build inside, one honest choice at a time." Then I closed my eyes, letting the hum of the world soften around me. And for the first time in years, the silence felt warm,